White guilt.
Let's talk about it.
I'm in.
Oh.
We're trying to kind of do the opposite of
Yeah.
radical deference because I feel like we need to have these conversations.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I wanted to have this in a fun but serious way to like talk about the things that we, I guess, like a lot of white people and maybe even black people, like we don't feel like we can come together and have a conversation about it.
Yeah.
But if we don't, then how do we like
Yeah.
become allies? How do we get better? How do we become educated if we shut everything down and don't have a conversation?
Well, I'm glad you brought up and black people because I have a lot of black friends who are like, oh, I don't want to talk about race. I think if we just don't talk about it, then maybe this thing can go away. I know black people who say that.
Wow.
They don't want to talk about it. And I'll tell you why. It's a thing of self-preservation. That's why I was like, black apprehension. Let's talk about it.
Yeah.
Because I have to be scared to talk about it. I could lose my job. I could lose my life. And
Yes,
you understand?
absolutely,
By
absolutely.
talking about it. And especially if you have a grandmother or great-great-grandmother or grandfather who taught you, don't talk about it.
Right.
Whenever, I have relatives that whenever they say white people, they whisper.
They whisper. I have relatives just like that too. They're like, yeah, you know what? There's a woman at work.
She's white. And then they go back to regular talk. Right.
Yeah.
You see
yeah,
what I'm saying?
absolutely.
Because they were taught to do that. They don't even realize they're still doing it. It is worth our lives to keep quiet about it.
Yeah, it's look, let's make it safer. A little safer place. It is no different than, because we also have seen studies, we know that the idea of not talking about salary, that's not for you, that's for your employer. That's so your employer can screw everyone else over. Now, not all employers think that, right? But a lot of this was built in such a way that now you don't know how much she makes and you're going to ask for less. Great, I'll give that to you. All of that goes out the window if people start to talk about what their salaries really are. Here's how much I get paid. Here's how much is in this career, right? But we're taught not to. And I feel like in these same places, like if we don't talk about these things, we don't get to hear about the stories, but we also don't get to hear about the victories. And those also happen, right? So we're not saying, woe is us, it's all terrible out there. There are a lot of victories that we can talk about too. And we'll never get to those if we don't start having those conversations.
Yeah. That's really interesting. And see, and I just learned something. I did not know people said white people. Like, I mean, that's information.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, we
Yeah.
gotta talk about it.
It's still the thing where, it's sort of this running joke about not tell. I know we've already talked about it, like in books. Everyone's white in a book unless they say black, right? So, oh, John walked into the bar, his black skin. Oh, that's the one black guy in this story, right? What, the whole Harry Potter thing? All the Harry Potter characters are white. Oh, because they pointed out one black person, you assume that's the only black person, right?
Yep.
And so I feel like this is just that same sort of thing. Lots of families do it, I've listened to my friends like blah blah blah. We saw this person. This person said a thing. This other person, she was black. She said blah blah blah. I'm like, what were the other ones not? Because I was picturing them all black.
Exactly.
We were talking about all black people, right? But no, not at all. It has to get pointed out sometimes.
I gotta tell this story. I'm sorry. Hold your thought.
Yeah, I will.
A friend of mine referred me to a casting person or whatever for a nice TV job on a show that's a predominantly black show, but she's the only white director on this show. So she's like, oh yeah, my friend June, she's gonna come in, she's wonderful and blah blah blah. And she's also Australian, so she has this accent and whatever. So they just assumed, they're like, oh yeah, I guess we could make the character white. She was like, why did you assume June is white? You think I don't have any black friends? You know what I mean? They automatically thought that her friend had to be white. For a black show, why would they think that? But they did because it was coming from her.
Right.
That's interesting.
It's sometimes a given, and it shouldn't be.
Yeah. So this is the thing. I know for sure for me, and I think other white people too, where I get self-conscious. So like, if I'm talking about two people, like, okay, we're talking about like, oh, look at those people over there, and there's one white person and one black person, or there's like three white people and one black person, and then they're like, who is it? And it's the black person, but you don't want to say it's the black person. So you're like, the one in the purple shirt. Well, there's several people wearing. Well, the one like I describe everything.
Are you speaking with a black person? Yes.
Yeah, I am. But like, because you kind of overcompensate. I don't know what it. It's just.
But it's just like us whispering white. You don't want
Right.
to say black.
Right. Or you just don't want to be like, that's not the only thing I see about that person,
Right.
but it is.
But
okay.
that's the predominant
Yeah.
thing. I mean, unless that orange is real bright, you're like the person with that orange, right? Like,
Right, I know.
yeah, it's. I wish I had an answer for it. I do it too, and sometimes I try not to. Oh, the person that flip flops. No, you know, yeah. So it's. I don't necessarily think that's bad, right? Because this is back to the. And I just want you all to know that we hate this person, every one of us, universally. I don't see color.
Oh my God.
I'm telling you this right now. You right in the face.
Yeah.
It is. That is that sort of
Right.
like see those 7 people over there. The person I'm talking about is that black one, right? To just not say that is like, oh yeah, they're wearing
So
the shorts. Looks like they're
similar.
wearing shorts.
Yeah.
Maybe. Yeah. Right. So I don't. I personally don't think there's anything wrong with saying like, oh yeah, no, the white guy right there.
Yeah.
That's and everyone's like, that one. We know who that is.
Because if there's 3 girls and 1 guy, you'd be like, the guy.
The guy. I'm talking about the guy, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely, with no worries about it. You want to go
Right.
the person with the tie, the tie.
And the glasses.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Are you talking about the guy?
Yeah.
Yeah. Talking about the man. Yeah. So I don't think there's anything wrong with it, but I also, again, we overcompensate for things that were bad, and so I also think maybe it's not so bad to do that, right? Up to a point.
Yeah.
There's a point where it gets comical when you've like named 14 things, and we still know what you're talking about because we're talking about a sorority and they're all wearing the same thing. We're like, no, the one whose shorts are a little shorter, the one who's like her back's to us right now. One of 4 people with their back to us.
Yeah.
But that goes back to the conversation. I love this show, by the way. Thank you all so much for inviting me because you guys had a great conversation about black or African American. Which one should I say? So that's why you don't want to say the black guy or African American guy or colored guy or Negro guy or you know what I mean? Because there's so many different terms.
Don't say
And
the
some
colored
people,
guy,
right?
Well,
but
it depends on where you're from, though. That's true.
And if you're older, colored is preferred.
Yes,
to
that's
black.
absolutely right.
You know
I keep
what I mean?
forgetting
Old
that.
school, you know, my grandmother's time, they would not like the word black because black is very 70s and black is power and all that kind of stuff. So she preferred colored.
There are people that
See what I'm saying?
are different African countries. Someone came over, I want to say Ghana, but I can't remember for certain, who black and colored are 2 different races. Now also note, this is also racist, right? But they're like, oh no, don't call me black, I'm colored. But that's because black is a thing to them, right? And so it's still so that person would have preferred color in a heartbeat, but not for honorable reasons, but because they don't like black people. But it's like a different caste. But also still black people.
It's different around the world. It really is.
Yeah.
This is water, by the way. These guys, these alkies. I'm not like that. It's water.
It's important to note that you're not a drinker, and I think that's
I'm not
cute.
a drinker. I think it's cute. Yeah, I don't drink alcohol.
I do. So.
Yeah.
And that's totally fine.
That's right.
Okay, but that's, and I think, I don't know, I think part of it is like, this is uncomfortable. And like, but it's okay, like, it's gonna be uncomfortable and weird and like even just like, okay, yeah, it's the black person. Or yeah, it's the white person. Like, and,
now I think especially if you're pointing out a thing that is stereotypical for them. Then it's real hard, right? If you're like, man, oh my God, the person's so loud. Which one? The, you know, just, you know the loud one, right? Or, oh God, the person's so square. Who are you talking about? No, right? Like, so I think there's, that sort of thing too, whether you're talking about this thing that is sort of a negative trait for that particular group. Then maybe that there's some, but usually it's not. Whenever I hear it, it's something innocuous. Like, oh my God, I love those shoes. Whose shoes? The person with the
shoes.
The one with those the loafers. With the, little. Yeah.
It seems to me that you're coming from a place of respect, but it feels to us like you're not an ally and you're in a way putting yourself in a more comfortable position because you don't have to deal with
That's exactly it. This
Must
is
be
that-
nice. Must be nice.
Must be nice. That zombie
Yeah.
apocalypse thing, right?
Yeah.
It's just like, oh, look, it's a zombie chasing a person out there. Well, I don't try to get into the middle of zombie stuff. So and then you just let the zombie eat the person. You're a person now. You're not being
Right.
like, oh, let everyone fight their own fight. That's just cowardly.
And this goes back to history, and this is the reason why we have to have history, all types of history, because there are a lot of white people who don't want us to talk about black history because they're afraid that it'll make them look bad. But think about the abolitionists. They were the ones who did look out and see somebody chasing the zombie, and they did something
Yes,
about it.
absolutely.
The abolitionists are the ones, but we will never know about the abolitionists if we don't talk about black
Yes.
history.
Yeah.
Who do you think hid us in the cellars and in their basements
Right.
when we were running on the Underground Railroad? It had to be white people because we didn't own houses. Who
Yeah.
was the one putting us in the back of the truck with the potatoes, and we had to be underneath the blanket and pretending that we're the potatoes, whatever. We were the Freedom Prize. We're the real Freedom Prize.
Oh,
You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
And we
Yes.
had to be there. Who do you think drove that buggy up to the north to Canada? Hey, Canada. Thank you, Canada.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?